Welcome to Word Bookstores. Just a quick little bio to Word. We're an independent bookstore. We have both a location here in Jersey City, but we also have a location in Brooklyn, and are about to expand to a kids bookstore as well. So, right? Ooh, it's adorable. It's going to be like one spot over from our current place in Brooklyn, so you can go and drop your kids off and then go listen to a quiet bookstore. It's gonna be awesome. So for tonight, we are going to have a discussion with me and Robert, and then we will also be following it up with audience questions. So if you have any questions, I know I have a million of them about the series, about writing it, and about the book Yar itself. Get those prepared. So for tonight, we're here to celebrate the release of the startling saga that Robert Repino created both with more. It now continues with DR, the epic sequel to the first War with No Name book. This is what a perfect little summation of it. In the twilight of all life on Earth, love survives, but at a cost only the desperate and reckless are willing to pay. So a quick little bio to Robert. He grew up in Drexel Hill, but after serving in the Peace Corps, he earned an MFA in creative writing from Emerson College. He lives in New York and works as an editor for Oxford University Press. DR follows the novel Mort and the novella Cul-de-sac in the War with No Name series. So Robert's going to do a short reading for us, and then we'll have a bit of a question and answer, and then we'll leave it up to you guys. So,
thank you. Thank you everyone for coming out. I really appreciate it. How's it work? No, good enough. Yeah, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. Thank you to Word Bookstore. So I'm going to read. I timed this. I think it's about 5 minutes, but we'll see. So the little scene we're going to have here, basically what happened in this book is following the events of the last book, Mort and his long-lost love, Sheba, not to give too much away, but they get reunited. The fact there's a sequel, I guess, gives it away. And they're living on a ranch in the Pennsylvania mountains, and Mort wants to live the quiet life there, but Sheba wants to sort of go out and have her own little adventures, and he doesn't appreciate that. They are weird kind of farmers because they have now domesticated the giant ants that are from the first book, and they are sort of like a herd of ants that they ride like horses and walk around, and occasionally whenever they die, they cook their meat and they eat them up. What else do you need to know about this scene? They are conducting a trade with the nearby town called Lodge City, which is made up of beavers. Lodge City has come under attack from a giant monster, and they've sought help from a husky. Okay, so there's a few things you need to know. There's a beaver from the city named Chingachgook that they do trade with. And what else do you need to know? And they've just come back from a day of dealing with them, and they've now gone to bed for the evening. And last thing I think you need to know is that Dark's nickname for Mort is Old Man. Okay, so she dresses him as Old Man sometimes. So I think that's
which is a perfect nickname.
Yeah, he's a curmudgeonly jerk. So okay, so they went to bed that night. Everything was peaceful, and then Sheba woke in a panic. Early morning light penetrated the blinds. Mort sat propped on his elbows, his ears stiff on his head, whiskers fluttering. He smelled it too. Some intruder, an animal, maybe more than one. Not Chingachgook, not a beaver at all, or a bat. Something she did not recognize. She reached for the rifle under her side of the bed. Mort retrieved his. They rose silently from the mattress. They had rehearsed this scenario many times, so much in fact that Sheba began to resent Mort's constant need for preparation and planning. And yet, as her heart raced, she watched herself do the things that Mort taught her. She belly crawled past the bedroom window to the hallway. Then she took her sword from a hook and strapped it over her shoulder. Rifles raised, she and Mort headed for the kitchen. No one had been inside. Everything remained in place. The plates from the night before sat in the sink. She gave Mort a thumbs up, and they moved to the den. They checked the peepholes drilled in the wall. She saw nothing. She saw nothing, though the odor of beavers now mingled with the mysterious animal scent. Mort knelt by the door, cracked it open. She stood behind him, her finger on her trigger. With the interior secure, they would scan the perimeter. Outside, a spiral staircase led to a crow's nest on the rooftop. Mort went up first. Sheba took cover behind the steps. The sun rose behind them, spreading a shadow from the cabin to the edge of the woods. To her left, the alphas milled about the pen. The plan for dealing with intruders called for her to wait at the bottom of the staircase until Mort gave the signal. But then the strange scent drifted by once again. A thick smell, definitely a meat-eater, a predator. The dread she felt leaked into her legs, making them go weak. In a panic, but still drawn to the scent, she climbed the steps and joined Mort in the crow's nest. He glared at her. "What's that smell?" she whispered. Mort kept his rifle on the wooden railing. "Mort." "It's another dog," he said, still aiming at an invisible target in the forest. It hurt him to say it. It was another way he had failed her, another compromise he made to keep them safe. They were so sheltered here, so isolated, that Sheba had never seen another dog before. "Are you sure it's not a wolf?" she asked. "No, I'm not." The herd broke its formation, with half the ants running away from the house in a stampede, spooked by some movement near the tree line. Mort aimed in that direction. Sheba propped her rifle beside his. She spotted someone slinking along the far side of the fence, trying to hide behind the grazing alphas. Sheba pointed at the dark shape. Mort nodded. They lifted their rifles from the railing, hopped onto the roof, and ran across it toward the pen. At the edge, they jumped, landing hard to scare the intruder. The creature ran, a little bouncing bowl of fur. Had to be a beaver. Mort and Sheba turned the corner of the fence to find the rodent waddling as fast as he could. Sheba trained her sights on him. "Stop!" someone shouted. "Don't shoot! We surrender!" The beaver froze. Meanwhile, a dog popped out from behind the trees, white belly and face, with black hair on his shoulders, spine, and tail. Sheba recognized the breed from one of her nature books, a husky. The dog shrugged off a backpack and tossed it to the side. He dropped to his knees and put his hands behind his head. "If you're going to shoot someone, shoot me," the dog said. "This was my idea." The beaver cowered. Sheba recognized him, the matriarch's son, Castor, the one who would lead Lodge City into a golden age, if she didn't kill him. Mort signaled to Sheba to keep an eye on the beaver. As she got closer, Castor curled into the fetal position, shaking. "I'm sorry," he whimpered. He posed no threat. Sheba stayed fixated on the strange wolf dog with the light blue eyes. "We'll shoot whomever we want," Mort said. "Would you like to know what we're doing here?" the husky asked. "It doesn't matter." "We need your help," the husky said, "and we want to help you." "We don't need your help." "Just give me a chance to explain. You're still alive and you're asking for another favor?" "Old man," Sheba said, "I want to hear what this dog has to say for himself." Husky and beaver exhaled. "If we don't like what he has to tell us, we'll feed him to the ants," she said, unsheathing her sword. Piece by piece. The beaver, too. Mort grinned. Sheba turned to the dog, her anger tempered by sheer fascination. "This had better be good," she said. "All right." All right. God, those are
No author does.
No author does.
So one of my favorite things about this series and about your writing is that I often forget that I'm reading about animals. So I want you to sort of talk a little bit about your character creation in the sense that I think what happens is that I forget I'm reading about animals, and then I'll stumble upon a scene where you've done a really great job of there's a scene later in the book where Mort is cleaning himself with his hand like a cat would. So talk a little bit about your sort of split between giving them human characteristics and animal characteristics, and where you sort of fell on that and why.
Yeah, for a lot of the characters it depends on which species they are. So there are some species that have had a long relationship with humans, and they end up being the most human-like the farther removed they are from this thing called the change, which is when the animals change from these, just regular animals on all fours to these bipedal creatures. So those animals that have been exposed to humans the most, that's sort of the rule that I'm following, is that they become the most human. Even though they also make a bigger show out of saying how much they hate the humans and how unlike the humans they actually are, which actually is bullshit. So there's that. Now there are some other characters, there's bats in this who have their own language. Chiropteran, I was really proud they came up with that. Chiropteran is the bat language, which is all squeaks. There are other creatures like birds that don't really talk to anyone and keep to themselves. So there are some rules that are being followed there. ultimately, I decided to err on the side of having them be more human, because that was sort of trying to satire the folly of assuming that we are the center of the universe. These animals can so easily mimic us, and that they have the same follies, that they themselves are mistaken because they think that somehow they can just automatically be better than us, even though they end up falling into the same traps. So that was sort of the rubric I was following, the parameters. A lot of people have called out the book for not being that consistent, and I have to admit, like, yeah, I guess it isn't. Like, some people have been like, well, on one page he said hand, and then the other page he said paw, and I'm like, you got me. Probably because I used the word hand 75 times in a row, and I had to say paw.
Sure.
Right, or like, you know, some people have been like, well, I was hoping this would be more of a book where the animals really stay more animal-like, but really this is a book about furries. Some people have come up with that. I'm like, I guess they're right. By the way, we got nominated for some like furry literary award. I'm not kidding. Yeah, it's called the Coyote.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I don't. They may have announced a winner already. I don't know. Obviously, I didn't win. I didn't hear anything else. Yeah, so I guess we're erring more on the side of being furries than being like, you know, more animal-like. But you know, some of the chapters that involve the animals before the change, that's where I kind of get more creative with having them sort of be ruled by their senses and their instincts and whatever.
So speaking about the change, in this book, the animals are sort of also starting to evolve a little bit, not to give too much away, but they're starting to not only be sort of sentient, but also sort of like evolving to something new. Was that something that you sort of knew you were going to investigate as you were writing Mort, or as you were sort of starting this process, or was that something that you realized it had to happen after?
Yeah, it was. I think it was something I always knew had to happen. I always had the basic idea for this story in my head, even when I was halfway finished with Mort. So I knew that this book was going to involve some new species that were angry at both the other animals and the humans. Everyone's angry at the humans, of course, for good reason. And I also knew that there would be some animals, and this is something I didn't get a chance to address much in the first book. But the first book is so focused on those animals who decided to rise up and kill the humans. And this book takes a little more time to talk about those animals who are either ambivalent or who were still very loyal to the humans. And a lot of the action, most of the second half of the book takes place in a city where the humans and the animals have formed a sort of uneasy alliance. But there's still, as you can imagine, there's a lot of opportunity for metaphor and allegory there, because obviously there's like bigotry against certain species and things like that. So, you know, if the animals want to survive in this world, they do have to become slightly more civilized, slightly more open-minded. They may even have to like suppress some of the instincts that they have kept them alive. So that's a very difficult thing for them to deal with. So that's where it had to go.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Did you always know that this book would be centered on Sheba? So the first book is very much about Mort and his sort of like, you know, progress and his like, you know, move from being a house cat to being a war hero. Did you always know that you wanted to sort of shift that and that you would have different perspectives? Was that always sort of the goal of yours?
It wasn't originally the goal, but I think as the story evolved, I was like, okay, she has to be the star of the show. And not to give too much away, you probably figured it out already. Like all the animals, Sheba changes her name, and it's. I'm pronouncing it dark, but I think that's actually incorrect.
You explained it in the book. I mean, in the book, you explain how to pronounce it.
Yeah.
But,
So
I would totally go with dark as well. It's much easier to say it that way.
Yeah. So I think as the story evolved, because a lot of the story is about her sort of stepping out of the shadows that she's in and stepping away from the expectations people have from her. So a lot of it is about her coming of age, and really the first book is about more coming of age, but this one, she's coming of age in a different way because she has all these expectations.
Right.
People, including Mort, want to put her in this box and she wants to break out of it. So because so much of the story is focused on that journey, she ended up having to be the main person. And Mort's still there doing Mort stuff as well, but usually breaking things. Usually breaking things or killing someone at the wrong time or blowing something up or saying something inappropriate. So he will always need to be there to stir the pot. So.
Were you excited to maybe take on a female voice? You know, Mort is very masculine. I mean, he's a war hero and the like. I mean, he's sort of is the like prototypical dude. Were you excited to maybe like write in a voice that was maybe a bit different from that, and also different from your own self?
I was excited. Also, it's daunting, and it
Sure.
felt, I was excited, but I definitely there had to be a little more. I just invest
Did you
more.
let anyone read it first to go, is this awful?
Well, that my agent
Okay,
was the
good.
first line of defense. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
But the important thing here was to make sure that Dark actually wanted something, because that always ends up missing from these stories. Dark wants something. She has a plan to get it. She actually puts the plan into motion. If you do that for any character, hopefully you're going to overcome some of the issues that might come across. So that was the plan, and having her, especially toward the end of the book, really drive the action and really like defy everybody else. Everybody says do this, she says no, I'm going to do it this way. Having that happen made it work better.
She's a great character.
Thank you.
She's very interesting. She's compelling from beginning to end. She's a great girl.
All right, good. I appreciate that. Thank you.
I'd also like to talk a little bit about the fact that this sort of seems like a different novel. I mean, so Mort is very much, I feel, a story about society and all of us as sort of a bigger, wider picture. Where Dar really feels more personal, feels more like a story about a outsider trying to figure out where she fits. Was that something that you sort of recognized, or were you sort of trying to make big statements about the world in general and Mort, and maybe just sort of focusing on a good story in TR?
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. Yeah, I think it is more personal. It had to be more personal because the first book, it's a love story, but it's really an unrequited love story.
Sure.
And in the second book, it's all about Mort finding out that unrequited love, as painful as it is actually way easier than an actual relationship where you actually work things out and compromise and things like that. And so him getting his comeuppance and finding out that he can't just control this person is a part of his journey as well. So yeah, it had to be more personal, although I did try to make it more sprawling in terms of it has more points of view, and the action is bigger, and there are bigger stakes again, and things like that. But yeah, I guess it did have to be a little more focused on the characters, whereas the first book is more like satire, and almost mean-spirited satire at some points, Like I said, the first book doesn't have enough about the animals actually getting along with the humans.
Right.
And a lot of people who read it were like, geez, Rob, I don't think my dog would kill me. Your cat would.
Your cat would.
Your cat would. Your cat,
Yeah, your cat would 100% eat you in a minute. So you actually just shared a story where scientists were like, if cats were bigger, they would eat us.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, we know.
Absolutely. Yeah, and really a big part of the story, this is where I'm getting a little pretentious, but I did want to make it sort of like Empire Strikes Back, in the sense that, because that is, I know that's the most dickhead thing to say, but I decided to aim low by saying
Yeah, sure.
but it's like Empire Strikes Back in the sense that, whereas the first story is a pretty straightforward action story, the second story is about the heroes being torn apart, and two of the characters end up forming relationships in the midst of that chaos. That had to be a big part of the thing that held everything together in this one. So yeah, that's way too pretentious. Right? That's talking animals shooting people. All right, what do you want?
Yeah, that's all you should really know.
The bats are cool.
They are. They're really good.
Thank you. Yeah.
Really quickly, what is your sort of writing space like? What music are you listening to as you're writing this? This has a lot of action scenes. It's got a lot of violence in it. So I'm just interested a little bit.
A little bit of violence.
A little bit. Actually, some of my favorite scenes are fairly violent. What are you listening to? What are you using to sort of get into that mind frame and get into that space where you're creating a lot of these very action-based and violent scenes?
The writing space is just a modest desk and nothing too fancy about it. I usually write from about 10 at night till after midnight. So you do 2 hours a night for a year and a half. You might have a manuscript length thing. But as far as the music I listen to, I can listen to anything while I'm writing, but while I'm editing, it usually is either dead silence or music, or ambient music or classical music, something that doesn't have words in it, because the words will mess me up. But depending on the scene, Man, I ended up getting really messed up writing this book.
Okay.
A couple things I had to do to finish this book. I had to make real life improvement decisions. I had to. This is terrible. I had to drink less.
Oh no! Never a good choice, everyone.
Yeah, it was weird. I actually last year I dropped 10 pounds, and because I was drinking less, I was eating healthier, and I also started drinking coffee. I never really had coffee before, and I started having some, and
It's a dangerous drug.
It's
dangerous.
Here's the thing. Back about a little over a year and a half ago, I had 2 cups of coffee back to back for the first time in my life. and this is at 10 p.m. So when my normal starting time.
Oh
I'm
no!
And then I remember looking behind me and the sun was coming up. And I was like, holy shit, it worked! That was amazing. And I had to force myself to go to bed. Because it was 7 in the morning. I'm like, I'm not tired, but I know something
you
bad.
Should know better.
Yeah, my heart's gonna stop if I don't. So that's my writing space. I ended up digging up a lot of weird. I ended up listening to Steve Winwood's greatest hits for a month. I don't know why. It just made me feel comfortable. It brought me back to the late 80s or 90s. It was very, it worked. I don't, let's not talk about it. Edit that part out. All right.
And my last question, obviously, is what are you working on now? Is there more to the story? Are we expecting a third? Because you do leave a bit of a cliffhanger.
There is, yes. So here's the thing. I'm not as far along with another story in the series as I was when Mort came out. When Mort came out, I was already halfway done.
Yeah.
This time I need a little more time to work on it, but I can just say, I hope you get a kick out of this. The wolves are coming. And they have a secret.
I do. I really do.
And they have a secret weapon. And they have an unholy alliance with the most dangerous species. Who would that be?
Human.
Man.
Come on.
You have to say it like Dr. Zaius from Man. So,
You've done
yeah, right. So I don't think I'm going to start writing that. I hope to start writing it maybe in early 2018. I don't think I'm ready yet.
Yeah.
I'm working on 2 other things right now. I have this novel that takes place in Delaware County where I grew up.
Nice, yeah.
That is your Delco epic, and it involves a kid blackmailing his principal. And I've been working on it for years, and I'm hoping that this year we at least show it to some people. We might just show it to 1 or 2 people and say it's dead. But I just at least want to kill it or have it be born, one way or the other. I don't care. And then I'm also working on a middle grade book that is sort of I'm going to say it's Toy Story meets Poltergeist meets The Dirty Dozen. All right, there you go.
I'm already intrigued.
There you go.
I'm already intrigued.
Yes.
Sending it to Word Kids immediately.
Right.
Sure.
I made it through without any curses, or I think there's only a little bit of blood, but the kids can handle it.
Yeah.
Kids can handle it.
Kids are more resilient than we think.
Right.
It's actually a movement in kids' literature, right? So be bold.
Yes, that's the plan. So I'm hoping those 2 projects will be done by the end of the year, and then I can start on whatever the next thing will be. And yes, there will be wolves.
Yeah.
That's the name of the book.
What's the cover going to look like, though? I mean, it's going to be so. These are also some of my favorite produced books. This is what is called in the business paper overboard. It's so good. I'm so happy that Soho decided to go with that. They're a beautiful combination.
Yeah.
So I'd be interested to see. And we don't have Cul-de-sac up here, which is the novella. Highly recommend. It's fascinating. If you are entrenched by Mort, you absolutely should read Cul-de-sac. It's crazy, but it's a great little purple sort of mixed in with this. So,
Cul-de-sac has
beautiful.
a bobcat on the cover.
Yeah,
So
they're a
bobcat,
beautiful set.
Yeah, bobcat dog, and I don't know what color the next one would be. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just as long as we get the same guy.
Sure.
Yeah, this is Capo Ing is the designer, and he's amazing, and I probably owe him my firstborn at this point. Wherever my firstborn is, I don't know.
Wherever that is.
Yeah, I don't know.
So audience questions. Does anybody have other questions?
Good, I'm getting off easy. Oh.
Go ahead.
Hi, first off, congratulations on the Furry Award.
I was nominated. I didn't get the award.
Nominations, yeah.
No, this is sort of a, not to give too much away with Cul-de-sac, but Cul-de-sac has an experience with coffee in that novella.
Yes.
Any personal experience at all with your relationship with coffee?
Oh. You know, it's funny because someone was asking me what is cul-de-sac about, and I was like, it's about cul-de-sac learning to like coffee. But there's more to it than that because it involves tragic love and things like that. No, it is not based on anything. I did not have any tragic love story related to coffee. Yeah.
There is time.
There is, yeah. The night
Our
is young.
cantina should be fixed by tomorrow.
Right. Yeah. Right. All right.
Speaking of cul-de-sac, are we going to see any more of the Red Sphinx?
You know, I think we can only see them in a flashback at this point because I feel like cul-de-sac
okay
kind of.
with
I need to come up with more excuses to have flashbacks because it's hard. Because you do that too much, and people are like,
yes, you do.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Yeah, I want to do more with it, and I actually, we have talked about possibly doing some kind of graphic novel element to this, and I think the stories of the yes.
I'm just gonna fall off my chair.
Yeah, all right,
Excuse me.
I think the stories of the Red Sphinx fits that the best. Because I think we've already done plenty of the Red Sphinx in the prose form, and I don't know what else it can contribute to the series. But I think as a side project with the graphic novel stuff, maybe that could happen. But I don't have any more specific Red Sphinx stories in mind at the moment. It's funny because there's a scene in Mort where he sort of lists a handful of things that happened. He's like, well, there was this one time when he blew up a machine gun nest. There was one time where he threw a sniper off a roof, and there was another time when he swam and planted a bomb on the edge of a boat. So I'm like, I made a book about one of those, so maybe I could do the other two. That might be overkill, but that's like, okay.
I think you have fandom enough that we would buy anything at this point.
All right, that's all I hear.
Not gonna lie.
Okay.
Any further questions?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, let me kick his, then we'll come back.
No, you next, and then
I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about your relationship to naming the characters, because it seems like there is kind of like an extra significance to the names of the characters, and the fact that they rename themselves as the book goes on, and there's also, seems like, literary connections with some of the characters to other characters that exist elsewhere, and just what your thoughts were about that.
Thank you. Couple things. First of all, it is a total coincidence that all three of the books have French names, because I don't speak French. I don't know how that happened. I came up with the name Mort. This is weird. I came up with the name Mort the day I had the dream that was the inspiration for this book. I got up and scribbled the word Mort and then went back to bed. And then later I added the E on the end. Later I ended up remembering, weirdly, that there was a teacher at my high school who would bring in, I'm not joking, like a puppet that was called Mort, and it was a cat. It's a long, and I was like, was that a subliminal thing? I don't know.
Maybe.
But the word Mort also means death, so that works for him. The other animals, I really tried to make a point to like.
Wawa.
Yeah, like Wawa obviously has very important connotations. But I made a point to have the animals choose names that they somehow felt were defiant in a way, even though they weren't necessarily, because a lot of them were based on names from human religion or human culture. So there was sort of an irony there where it's like, yeah, I'm going to kill humans and I'm going to call myself like Hercules. It's like, but Hercules is a human hero, so why would you do that?
Right.
So there was supposed to be an element of irony there. Also the animals.
Which I think comes across.
Yeah, I think that's
I think it's funny that they all sort of are taking these very human things and applying it to
And every once in a while there'll be an animal with a name like Juke or something, which says what did you just see that? I also wanted to have names from different cultures as well, because I feel like one of the things that drives me nuts about like C.S. Lewis is all the names are all like so British, like Lord Piddlybop or whatever. Like I hate that. So I wanted to make sure there was like names from different languages. At one point, I had this cockamamie idea to have all the beavers have Native American names, but I couldn't find good ways to render them in English because they're difficult to pronounce, and also I don't know, it could come across as offensive too. So I wanted So so it's across different cultures, supposed to be in defiance of the humans, but yet again falling short because ultimately they are borrowing from human culture. So yeah. All right.
Did you have one final question?
I was just, any plans to present this side story from the human side?
I am trying to not do that.
Okay.
But I can't promise I can resist it for much longer. Because, You know, I cheated in more because there's a scene where the queen reads a guy's mind, and so we do sort of get a scene from a human perspective, even though it's not really. And in this one also has a human character named Grace. Not ironically named at all, I promise. Grace is a little disagreeable, can we say? And so there's some flashbacks involving Grace and her experiences during the war, so to speak. And so, again, I'm cheating there, because even though it's being told from another person's perspective, the human is sitting there telling her story. So I've resisted it because I want the humans to be the other. I want them to be the alien and the enemy. So it's really important to not have empathy with them the way you would with the animals. But like I said, third book, who knows what's going to happen? Who knows how many illicit substances it's going to take to get through that one?
Humans have had their say, I
Yeah.
think. I mean, the whole of literature is humans having their say, right?
The academic phrase is, I want to center the animal. I think that's the best. Yeah.
Any final questions?
Yes.
So you've been teaching creative writing at Gotham, right?
Yes.
Have you learned anything from teaching that helped that you implemented in this book or anything else you've been writing?
Well, are you trying to bait me into telling a story that you know?
Yes.
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 I mean, one of the things I learned is how often I do things that I tell my students not to do. Because
You don't have
once
to tell that one if you don't want to.
I think I do have to tell it. I think I do have to tell it. Because, by the way, I've never met her. I don't know. Both of these books at one point were 100 pages longer, and I had to cut them. Now, you might say, well, that's a lot of material, but actually it's all junk because I have a tendency to tell too much. Now the telling, yeah, it is hard. I mean, because there's a lot of world building you have to do, and the easy way to do that is telling. So the thing that I kept realizing was I kept correcting my students, and it's so easy to correct other people when they're telling, but it's not easy to catch it yourself. So I reached peak telling.
It's like capital P, capital T.
Oh God, all caps.
Yeah,
really.
okay.
But wait, this is unbelievable. And I'm probably gonna tell the story again on Friday. But I had a scene where a character is looking through a rifle scope, and then the next paragraph began with, "The scope magnified the view."
Oh.
And my editor wrote in the column, "No kidding." And I was like, "Don't." Like I did like the Elmer Fudd like. So once you start realizing how often you're doing that, you start to cut that. But again, I told I also used the word probably 163 times in the first draft of this. Don't tell anyone. Cut that part out.
So thank you everyone for coming out, for listening to us, and to listening to Robert. Thank you all. If you would like to purchase a copy of the book, again, they're up at the front, and I'm sure Robert would be happy to sign for you. So thank you everyone.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.